I'm Vikram, and I'm telling you right now, Kavya is going to disagree with me before this episode is over.
I'm Kavya. Welcome to Newspresso. It's Friday, August 28th, 2026. And for the record, I think you're setting yourself up to be wrong on purpose.
That is a very Friday way to start a show.
It is. And we've got a lot to unpack, so let's get into it.
The US is widening sanctions on Iran again, and this one is being framed as a very sweeping push.
Operation Economic Outcast. Even the name sounds like Washington is trying to make the point as loudly as possible.
Exactly. Treasury targeted Iran's aviation, shipping, gold, technology, and digital assets, and nearly 60 entities, individuals, and vessels were blacklisted across multiple countries.
But what's interesting is the uncertainty around impact, right? Because the pressure's real, but it's not obvious yet how much this changes on the ground.
That's the pattern here actually. This looks a lot like a return to maximum pressure, but markets have not reacted with the kind of shock some people expected.
And meanwhile, Tehran is calling it economic terrorism and telling the UN and other states not to recognize unilateral sanctions.
Yes, and you've also got mediation running in parallel. Pakistan sending its defense chief to Tehran, Oman sketching a Hormuz framework, and China objecting very strongly to unilateral sanctions.
So if you zoom out, it's not just pressure versus pressure. It's pressure versus a bunch of regional and global actors trying to keep some kind of opening alive.
And the human side is not abstract. Rising prices and a faltering rial hit ordinary Iranians first.
Right. The big question is whether this pushes Tehran towards talks or just hardens the countermove. Okay, this next one is bizarre in a very specific way. Trump says Iran's leader is alive but badly wounded.
He said in a Glenn Beck interview that Mujtaba Khamenei is not dead, just injured on the left side of the body.
And he's missing after the February strikes, but Iranian officials are still supposedly referring to him for talks and approvals.
That's what Trump pointed to as evidence. He was basically saying if he were dead, they'd stage a more convincing public show around decisions.
It's such a strange window into how they're all reading each other's signals.
And this goes back to the broader war timeline. The US-Israeli strikes on February 28 killed Iran's top leadership. Then came blockade pressure and shipping controls in the Strait of Hormuz.
So the health question isn't just gossip. It's tied to who actually has power and whether anyone can make a deal.
Exactly. And what people don't remember is that Trump is saying there's no rush for talks and predicting an end to the fighting fairly soon.
But the Strait of Hormuz is still a pressure point, so even a soon end doesn't mean the tension disappears.
No, it doesn't.
Alright, shifting gears, and honestly after that, I need a weather story. But this one is not exactly gentle either.
It's devastating. A glacier collapse upstream likely triggered a rock and ice avalanche, blocked a river, and then released a torrent downstream into Nepal's border valleys.
The scenes from Bhotekoshi and Trishuli sound horrific. Mud, wrecked homes, stranded travelers.
Authorities are talking about roughly 150 to 160 dead and hundreds missing, including foreign tourists and Kailash Mansarovar pilgrims.
And the rescue response is broad. Nepal police, Nepali army's lights, international aid, all moving into places like Rasua and Nuwakot.
The problem is access. Bridges and hydropower sites have been swept away, so relief itself is slowed down by the damage.
The satellite and drone images must be so stark. Before and after views of the river channels and flooded valleys.
They are. And across the border, Tibetan authorities are reporting major casualties and dozens missing in Jirong County.
So this is really cross-border, not just one local disaster.
Yes, and the larger point is the vulnerability. Glacier melt, seismic activity, downstream flood risk, all of that is part of the same fragile system.
And climate change is clearly in the background here, even if the immediate trigger was that collapse.
Exactly. The mountains are not forgiving.
No, they really aren't. Okay, business time. The July PCE came in at 3.7% year-over-year, right in line with forecasts.
And the core PCE was 3.3%. On a monthly basis, both the headline and core measures rose 0.2%.
So inflation isn't running away, but it also isn't letting go.
That's the cleanest read. Personal income was up 0.4%, disposable income rose 0.5%, spending was up 0.2%, and the saving rate was about 3.0%.
So households are still earning more, but they're being careful with it.
Exactly. Real spending essentially stalled after inflation, with people shifting towards services and cutting back on goods.
That feels very tight budget energy.
The Fed will be watching all of this closely, especially with Jackson Hole coming up and Chair Kevin Walsh set to speak.
And the tricky part is that some officials want to hold rates, while others worry inflation is still too sticky to say it's headed back to 2%.
Yes, the second quarter GDP number was unrevised at 1.5%, but the price deflator was revised higher to 6.4%.
So slower growth, persistent prices, cautious spending, that's the backdrop.
That's the backdrop.
Now this one is much more upbeat. Hyundai is betting big on India.
Very big. The company says it plans to launch or refresh 26 models in India by 2030.
26 is a serious commitment. That's not a token market strategy.
No, it isn't. It's part of a broader plan to add 1.27 million units of global capacity by 2030 and introduce over 100 models worldwide.
And India is clearly meant to be a hub here, with localization, more exports, and more than 900 engineers locally.
Plus, an A-segment electric SUV is due in the December quarter of 2026 with a lower price aim.
That's the detail I think matters most for regular buyers. The EV story only lands if the price and localization make sense.
And Hyundai says it wants electrified vehicles to make up 60% of sales by 2030.
They're also talking about exporting roughly 30% of India-produced vehicles.
Right. And beyond EVs, they are pushing hybrids, body-on-frame trucks, and light commercial vehicles.
So it's not one powertrain story. It's basically a full-range product offensive.
And the first extended-range electric vehicle, the e-REV, is supposed to roll out in 2027, starting with the Santa Fe e-REV in the US.
That range anxiety angle is interesting. They're clearly trying to cover every version of buyer hesitation.
They are, and India is right in the middle of that strategy.
Staying with money, the government's Hindustan Copper offer for sale raised nearly 3,000 crore.
That sounds like the kind of thing that usually feels routine, but this one got a hot reception.
It did. Strong demand from non-retail investors pushed the government to exercise the green shoe option.
And the offer was 5.8 crore shares with a floor price of 514.
Correct. Bids went well beyond what was on offer. More than 41 million shares against 5.8 million shares up for sale.
So in plain English, people wanted in.
Very much so. The sale was up to 6%, including the 3% green shoe option, and the government's holding in Hindustan Copper is currently 66.14%.
This is all part of the bigger disinvestment and asset monetization push for FY27, with the government aiming to raise about 80,000 crores this year.
Yes, and the discounted floor price helped attract demand.
What's the practical effect after a sale like this?
Market liquidity, potentially more share activity in the near term, and a temporary reduction in government ownership.
Temporary being the keyword there.
Always.
Alright, moving into tech, and this next one is huge, because it's not just a fine, it's a whole rulebook shift.
Meta has agreed to an $18 billion settlement to end the teen safety fight.
And the allegations were serious. California and nearly every other state said Facebook and Instagram were built to hook young users, collect data on children under 13 without consent, and hide the risks.
That's the kind of case that goes straight to how platforms are designed.
Exactly. Meta denies wrongdoing, but the settlement requires major changes.
Like default daily time limits of 2 hours across both platforms, a nighttime block, and removing likes from teen posts.
Also stronger age checks, parental controls, and safeguards to prevent underage access to certain content.
So this is not just money changing hands, it's product behavior changing.
Yes, and the money would be distributed over 10 years if approved, with the total able to rise if other platforms join similar deals.
I can see why state attorneys general would call it a milestone.
They see it as forcing Meta and maybe other companies to rethink engagement-first design for young users.
What's still hanging over this is that other lawsuits remain, and Congress still hasn't made uniform safeguards across all platforms.
That's right. The court still has to approve the deal, and only then would the changes take effect nationwide.
It's a big step, but not the end of the whole conversation.
Not even close.
Now for the courtroom drama in Delhi. Sukesh Chandrasekhar has filed a writ petition challenging his conviction.
This is the case where he was found guilty for impersonating a public servant, threatening a public servant, and criminal intimidation through anonymous communication, right?
Yes, under IPC sections 170, 189 and 507.
And the detail that keeps sticking with me is that he allegedly pretended to be a Supreme Court judge's secretary and then the judge himself, all to press a bail request.
That's the allegation. The court said it was a direct affront to judicial independence.
That's a pretty stark phrase.
It is. The prosecution says this goes back to April 2017, when he was in police custody in another corruption case and allegedly used Constable Manjeet's phone to call Special Judge Poonam Chaudhary.
And the evidence chain included call detail records and witness statements, even though the court did criticize the police investigation for gaps.
Right, especially the failure to recover the phone.
So now he's asking the Delhi High Court to set aside the conviction and expunge remarks he says were prejudicial and beyond the record.
Yes, his lawyers argue there was bias and that 8 years of detention is too much for an offense with a 2-year maximum.
The sentencing hearing is still ahead, so this isn't really over.
No, and the broader issue is public faith in the justice system. That's what this case keeps circling.
Okay, final story, and this one is just painful. IIT Delhi has formed a final panel after a student's campus death.
A 31-year-old MSc physics student died after falling from the 6th floor on August 22.
And police say no suicide note was recovered.
An abetment to suicide case was registered against unidentified persons.
The institute has announced a 5-member external inquiry panel led by Justice Mukta Gupta with AIIMS Delhi psychiatrist Pratap Sharan, 2 student representatives and the registrar as secretary.
And there was an earlier complication. Ashok Kumar, who had initially been named to chair the panel, recused himself due to prior commitments.
I remember that students had protested and class suspensions were forced because they wanted an independent inquiry and accountability.
Yes, the institute says it's providing financial help to the family and will appoint an external ombudsperson for grievances.
Police are also reviewing counseling records and hospital treatment history to understand possible mental health factors.
And the wider debate is exactly what you'd expect. Campus mental health care, transparency, housing, academic pressure, and whether elite institutions are actually built to support students when things go wrong.
That's the thing that connects this to so many other campus stories. The issue isn't just one tragedy. It's whether the system is built to notice people before they fall through it.
Well put. The panel will have to prove it can do more than produce another report.
Yeah, it has to feel credible.
And that's our Friday roundup.
Thanks for hanging out with us on Newspresso. Stay tuned, we'll be back soon.